Something happened on that stage that absolutely nobody was prepared for. It didn't feel like a normal concert, and it didn't feel like a typical praise break either. It felt like something nobody in that room had seen before. Something heavy. Something electric. Something that people still struggle to put into words. It was like a spiritual earthquake came through that building, the moment Tasha Cobbs pointed into the crowd and brought Kierra Sheard to the stage. From that exact second, the entire atmosphere shifted so suddenly that people had no chance to adjust. Kirk Franklin froze mid-reaction. The choir literally stopped on the spot. Even the band, fully locked into the groove and completely synced with Tasha, had to pull back as Kiara stepped forward and released a level of force people are still discussing, debating, and replaying today. Many who witnessed it said, "That wasn't just singing, that was something taking over. That was something breaking loose." And the crazy thing is that what happened right after Kiara hit her very first sound is what has everyone talking. Because this wasn't just another gospel moment. It wasn't just another worship clip. What happened that night has already become one of the most replayed, most intense, most emotionally charged gospel clips circulating anywhere online. And once you understand the full story, what led to it, what happened in the room, what happened backstage, and what even happened within the artists themselves, you'll never look at that viral moment the same way again. Because this wasn't planned, this wasn't rehearsed, and this absolutely was not something Kirk Franklin ever thought he would witness from the front row that night. Before the stage even shook, before Kiara walked up and changed the course of the entire room, something deeper was happening. There was a tension in the air that nobody could explain. The venue was already filled beyond capacity, people spilling into aisles, ushers trying and failing to find extra chairs, fans whispering that something about Tasha felt different. She wasn't just focused, she wasn't just prepared, she looked like someone carrying something heavy, something urgent, something she knew was about to erupt. And behind the scenes, that energy was even more intense. Just minutes before stepping on stage, Tasha Cobbs wasn't calm or casually warming up. She was pacing, back and forth, hands moving, praying under her breath, whispering phrases to herself, taking deep intentional breaths like she was preparing for something she couldn't fully articulate. One background vocalist later shared that she heard Tasha repeating the same line over and over. "It's going to happen tonight. I can feel it. It's going to happen tonight." No one knew what she meant. Not the singers, not the band, not even the production team. And even though Kirk Franklin wasn't performing that night, he arrived early and sat quietly near the front. He didn't laugh. He didn't talk much. He wasn't pacing around greeting people like he usually does. Instead, he was watching, studying, sitting with his elbows on his knees as if he could already sense a spark forming around Tasha before anyone else noticed it. And he wasn't wrong, because the moment she began the very first song, the entire room felt the shift with her. Her voice didn't just sound good, it sounded heavy, weighted, intentional. Every word she sang felt like it carried a spiritual charge behind it, and the crowd responded almost instantly. People lifted their hands. People cried within minutes. Some were already kneeling on the floor before the first chorus even finished. It was clear that something was building, something nobody could define yet, but they all felt it. But here's where the real twist begins. Kiara wasn't scheduled. She wasn't on any program. She wasn't listed. She wasn't cued. She wasn't backstage waiting to come out. She was sitting in the audience, like everybody else, completely unaware that her entire night and the internet's next viral explosion was moments away from shifting. And Tasha, she felt something. She knew something. She looked out into the crowd, scanning hundreds of faces until her eyes landed on one familiar figure, Kiara. What she did next shocked her own team. The musicians didn't expect it. Production wasn't ready. But Tasha moved anyway because something in her spirit pushed her forward. Right in the middle of a fully engaged worship moment, with the band locked tight and the crowd flowing, Tasha suddenly stopped singing. The musicians shot confused glances at each other. Background vocalists held a note too long. Lighting techs froze, unsure whether they missed a cue or something had gone wrong. But nothing was wrong. This was the moment everything changed. Tasha took a breath, lifted her mic again, and began scanning the room like she was searching for someone the crowd couldn't see. And the audience felt it instantly. They leaned forward. They whispered. They looked around, trying to figure out what or who Tasha was looking for. Then it happened. Tasha pointed directly at Kierra Sheard. Not the stage, not the VIP section, not the wings, straight into the audience. A visible wave of shock moved through the entire crowd. Gasps echoed across the venue, and when cameras caught Kiera's face, her reaction said everything: surprise, confusion, intensity, and a quiet internal "Lord, what is happening?" Kirk Franklin leaned back in his seat, nodded slowly like he understood something unfolding that the rest of the crowd couldn't yet see. He didn't clap. He didn't shout. He just watched, locked in, eyes wide. Tasha lifted her mic and said, "Kiara, come up here right now. Now here's the thing. In gospel concerts, artists do not just call another major artist onto the stage with no warning. Production has to know, sound has to prepare, musicians need cues." But Tasha didn't care. She wasn't moving by structure. She was moving by impulse, what many later called divine impulse. The crowd erupted, cameras shot up, people pushed forward to capture the moment. Kiara stood up slowly, almost reluctantly, like she had to confirm whether Tasha really meant it. Her family looked shocked. A few people tapped her shoulder in encouragement, and one woman beside her cried before Kiara even moved. The tabulan, that's winatis, the one folded finding traumatis and feeble wanatup, with musbroch ferki segmenduftons, with tol libet wanet, to waluftob fortudes atum tunit ferquit shaking under the weight in the room. As she climbed the steps, Tasha extended her hand with a look of recognition, relief, expectation, almost like she had been waiting for this moment the entire night. But the real shock came the second Kiara touched the microphone. When Kiara stepped onto the stage, a hush fell over the entire venue. Not silence, anticipation. A thick, charged electric pause that only happens before something massive breaks. Even the band softened their playing without any signal. It was like the whole room instinctively understood. Something was about to hit. Tasha placed the mic gently into Kiara's hand and whispered something to her. Nobody in the audience could hear it, but the look on Kiara's face said everything. Her eyes widened. Her expression softened. Confusion turned to recognition. Like a moment she didn't know she had been avoiding had finally arrived. Then it happened. Kiara didn't start with a note. She started with a breath. A long, trembling breath that echoed through the microphone and sent chills through the front rows. Someone in the balcony screamed, "Yes, Lord," before she said a word. And then Kiara released a sound. Deep, heavy, raw, unfiltered. Not a run. Not a riff. A cry. A cry filled with decades of pressure, calling, pain, and anointing braided together. The room detonated. The musicians froze. Kirk Franklin jumped to his feet so fast his chair almost fell. His hand flew to his chest and he mouthed, "Oh my God." This wasn't singing. This was spiritual combustion. Kiara leaned forward, eyes closed, gripping the mic, pouring out a sound so heavy the background singers instinctively dropped into harmonies as if they had been rehearsing all week. They hadn't. They were simply responding to the fire coming off that microphone. Tasha stepped back, hands lifted, head bowed, surrendering the moment completely, and the audience, they broke. People cried openly. Some dropped to their knees. Others shouted prayers that echoed off the walls. Then Kiara hit the phrase that would go viral, "Lord, do it right here." The band caught it instantly. Thunder rolled behind her, organs swelling, drums pulsing, bass shaking the floor, and the crowd lost control. People shook, people ran, people bent over, sobbing into their hands. Even security guards, usually straight-faced and focused, were visibly moved. And then 10 seconds later came the note that sent the entire venue into chaos. Kiara hit a sound so high, so forceful, so emotionally charged, that a background singer literally dropped her mic and fell to her knees. The cameraman closest to the stage stumbled backward trying to keep his shot steady, and for a split second, the lights flickered overhead as if the building itself reacted to the force coming off that microphone. Tasha's eyes filled with tears as she looked around the stage, almost stunned that she was even witnessing this. Meanwhile, Kirk Franklin had fully abandoned his seat. He was pacing back and forth at the side of the stage, shaking his head, clapping, laughing, pointing, reacting like a man seeing something supernatural unfold right in front of him. At one point, he even turned around and shouted at the crowd, "Y'all not hearing her? You're not hearing her." And he wasn't wrong. Kiara was hitting a level most singers never even approach. But what happened next took things to an even more intense place. Just when everyone thought Kiara had peaked, she suddenly shifted. Her stance changed, her breathing changed, her tone deepened, and she slipped into another phrase, one nobody expected. A phrase that felt less like singing and more like a prophetic declaration. And the band followed her again with no rehearsal, no cues, no signals. They went with her instinctively, like she was pulling the entire room into a new spiritual gear no one expected to reach. But while the audience was being swept into a spiritual whirlwind, something very different was happening backstage. What most people don't understand is that moments like this, moments that are spontaneous, explosive, unscripted, are powerful on stage but stressful and chaotic behind the scenes. Production teams start scrambling because everything they rehearsed becomes irrelevant, and the energy begins to exceed what anyone prepared for. And that's exactly what happened that night. As Kiara released that second surge of power, that long earth-shaking cry, the backstage communication system went wild. Headsets crackled, directors began shouting, stage managers rushed to reposition cameras to capture what they could. Audio techs frantically adjusted levels because Kiara's voice was so powerful it was peaking every meter on the soundboard. Red warning lights began blinking repeatedly. But the part that caused real panic wasn't the audio spikes. It was something else entirely. One crew member sprinted up to the stage manager and said, "We didn't prepare her mic. That's not her channel." Meaning Kiara had grabbed a mic that wasn't set for her voice. It was for a softer background vocalist, not a powerhouse. Her voice was blowing the levels out, shaking the speakers, overwhelming the entire mix. The sound team had two choices: interrupt the moment to fix it, or let the chaos happen and hope the equipment survived. And everyone backstage agreed on the same thing. Nobody wanted to be responsible for shutting down a moment that was clearly bigger than the show, so they let it happen. Out front, everything escalated again. Kiara planted her feet and poured everything she had into a spontaneous worship run that felt almost too heavy for the stage. Her voice cracked once, not from strain, but from raw emotion, and that single crack sent the crowd into another wave of screaming and crying. Tasha stepped forward, maybe to support her physically, maybe to steady her emotionally, but before she reached her, Kiara raised her other hand and released a note so explosive it echoed like a sonic boom. The drummer hit an accidental fill out of shock. The lighting tech gasped. The crowd went into complete freefall. People were screaming. People were falling out. People were literally running laps in the aisles. Some were doubled over crying. Others were shaking uncontrollably. In the video footage, you can see ushers trying to help overwhelmed people, while others waved their arms like they were trying to catch the energy coming off the stage. And Kirk Franklin, at this point, he was pacing fast near the stage, hands on his head, eyes wide, reacting like he was witnessing something he might never see again in his lifetime. Then came a moment nobody in the room will ever forget. Kiara bent forward with the mic, one hand on her knee, voice trembling, and shouted, "You don't know what God had to carry me through." The crowd erupted violently. People wailed, chairs shook, someone in the front row nearly collapsed, and 3 others grabbed her to keep her on her feet. Even the cameraman lost control of his shot and had to reset. Backstage, the panic increased. The production director kept repeating, "We have to get control of this." The audio lead yelled, "The board is clipping. This is too hot." A staff member added, "We need to prepare for transition. This is going too long." But nobody dared step out. Nobody wanted to interrupt what they all knew was far beyond performance. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a breaking point, a release, something deeply spiritual unfolding on its own. And just when the team thought things couldn't escalate any further, they did. Kiara straightened her back slowly, wiped her face, and looked out into the roaring crowd. Then she walked toward Tasha with a boldness, a purpose, an emotional depth that sent chills through the entire front row. Something was about to happen between them. Something powerful, something intimate, something the audience had never seen between these two women before. As she approached, the band softened instinctively. The shouting in the room dimmed. It was like the entire space held its breath. As she got close to Tasha, their eyes locked, and instantly part of the crowd quieted, sensing a shift. Kiara leaned in close, so close their foreheads nearly touched, and began singing directly to Tasha with a trembling vibrato that didn't sound like a vocal run. It sounded like a confession, a release, a confession in the form of worship. Tasha broke, her chin quivered, her shoulders dropped. She covered her face and began sobbing openly on stage. The mic picked up every shaky breath, every gasp, every piece of emotion she'd been holding back all night. The crowd watched 2 powerhouse gospel women breaking in front of them, not from pressure, but from something spiritual happening in real time. The screams in the crowd grew louder as people witnessed both women pouring out raw emotion. Some shouted prayers, some cried silently, some just froze in shock. But just when the moment seemed like it reached its emotional limit, something happened that nobody, absolutely nobody, expected. Kirk Franklin stepped out. He didn't run. He didn't rush. He walked slowly, carefully, eyes fixed on the 2 women, hands raised like he was approaching a fire he didn't want to disturb. The band softened even more. Background singers lowered their volume. Even the audience's screams lowered to a murmur. Everyone waited to see what Kirk would do. He approached them gently, leaned in and whispered something. Nobody heard it. Not the microphones, not the cameras. But whatever he said hit deeply. Tasha nodded through tears. Kiara inhaled sharply, and for a moment everything on stage froze. Kirk lifted his head, turned toward the crowd, raised his hand, and instantly the room fell silent. Not gradually, instantly, and Kirk said with a trembling voice, "You have no idea what these women have been fighting." The crowd gasped. Musicians looked stunned. People leaned forward waiting for more, waiting for him to reveal something heavy, something hidden, something behind the scenes. "You just saw the release," he continued, "but you don't know the weight."
Those words hit the room like revelation. Suddenly it all made sense. The tension. This moment wasn't about vocals or performance. This was about battles, pressure, hidden storms, the kind of pain artists rarely talk about publicly. But before Kirk could say anything else, Kiara stepped back from Tasha with fire in her eyes. Something shifted in her posture. Her voice deepened. Her face took on a fierce, almost prophetic expression. She pointed toward the crowd and shouted, "You're looking at deliverance happening in real time." People jumped to their feet again. The room exploded with energy all over again. And then, without warning, the lights flickered. For a moment, the entire venue dimmed as if even the electrical system couldn't keep up with the force in the room. Backstage techs panicked, shouting into radios, but the audience took it as another sign, another confirmation that the moment was bigger than the stage. And Kiara kept singing louder, stronger, more intense than she had at any point before. And that is exactly where your competitor's script would continue into the final section.